Breaking news, everyone. Mass deportations have begun. ICE raids going on now in numerous cities around the country. Come on in. We're going to talk about the Trump plan. Mass deportations is going on. ICE raids in Boston, Chicago, going on as we speak. You see here, this is in Texas. They're putting buoys across the Rio Grande. Texas is putting buoys to prevent people from coming across and coming into the country illegally. ICE just put out a tweet saying so far 538 arrests have happened in the last few days since the new Trump administration has been put in play here. Just 3 days now since Trump has been inaugurated, and a lot is going on, and a lot continue to go on. All eyes on Chicago. Hello, Magnolia.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
I don't know if you're muted or what, but come on in.
Can you hear me?
How you doing?
Good. Hi, everybody.
Great. So look at this right here. This is buoys going across the Rio Grande. This is and the courts ruled that Texas can do this, by the way. ICE raids, Magnolia, a lot going on. We've compiled a bunch of clips. Wow, there are a lot of activity, to say the least.
Yeah, it's a lot. So News Nation actually posted an update a little bit ago, and the number is up to 840 now. So more than 840 illegal aliens have been arrested by ICE in the first 3 days of the Trump administration. And the number does not include those that were taken into custody by Border Patrol, Homeland Security, or U.S. Marshals. So the number is higher than we actually know so far. But yeah, it's going on all over the country. And when we wanted to do this today, when we were looking for different clips, it's like there's just so many. There's so many. It's happening in Chicago, Boston. Where else I think Denver
area, it's starting to happen. And what's interesting, yeah. What's interesting, Magnolia, is also you're having a lot of these county sheriffs that say they're on board, and if the Trump administration needs a facility to hold these people, they can use their facilities to hold them before they get deported. So a lot of cooperation we see going on all across the board here. It is wild, folks. And I think Chicago is the target here for the next few weeks. Just massive amounts of raids about to happen. Case in point, today, Pritzker and Brandon Johnson, the governor of Illinois, and Brandon Johnson addressed questions on this matter and spoke, and we'll play that too. But we wanted to share like lots of things that are going on. I see a lot of people in the chat. This is a very hot topic. All eyes right now on the mass deportations, correct, Magnolia?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's a big deal that's happening. A lot of resources are going into this, including the military.
Yes, military is going down on the southern border. Also, Border Patrol has been authorized at this point. Let me see. News Nation reporter Allie Bradley, who covers the border, said that they are now going to be hunting down people at the border instead of, with the Border Patrol under the Biden administration processing and just waiting for people to come in. Well, now they're going to go hunt them down and arrest them. It's going to be, and they're also authorized to use of force, which is interesting too. What does that mean? Yeah. Use of force policy. Wild stuff. What do we got first that we can share with everyone, Magnolia? Well, what do we got in the pipeline here?
Yeah, well, we'll just kind of go over some of the policies that they're doing first, and then we'll kind of look in deeper and see where this is happening, like what cities in particular. And it's not just it also appears that it's not just the illegal immigrants that they're going after, it's the people who are facilitating this as well.
Yes, they did an ICE raid today at a immigration attorney's
executive order
office in
signed by
Providence.
U.S. President.
In Providence.
Yeah. All right.
What do we got
Among
here?
the many executive orders signed by U.S. President Donald Trump, several have to do with the U.S.-Mexico border. The CBC's Richard Madden has been covering this for us throughout the Trump transition, and he joins us now live from McAllen, Texas, an unusually cold McAllen, Texas. Okay, so Richard, there's a lot of focus on Trump's emergency declaration at the border. What are you hearing on that front?
Yeah, a lot of residents here on this busy southern border town are bracing for this show of force that President Trump and his administration have channeled to expect here all along the southern border. And just to show you where we are, this is the border wall separating Texas and Mexico. It's about 30 feet high. That's roughly 8 meters, and it stretches for miles all along the border. On the other side here, Mark, we'll just get you to pan around if you can. There's some border patrol, but that's Reynosa, Mexico. That's about 2 kilometers down this road. Now, as you saw yesterday, President Trump announced an emergency declaration. It's an executive order, really, declaring the southern border a national emergency. And what that essentially does, that unlocks the resources and personnel from the Pentagon, suggesting that the National Guard will be here along the border and other surveillance tools by the Department of Defense. Now, we haven't seen anything yet. The emergency declaration said that this would be activated at 6 a.m. this morning, but as you can see, it appears to be business as usual. But with this executive order comes concerns from this tight-knit community where people go back and forth between the southern border and, of course, the northern border here into Texas. There's concerns about these mass deportations, removing undocumented immigrants. Many of them work in farmers' fields, in processing plants, and in construction. There's concerns that that could have a dramatic impact on the economy. There's also the political concerns as well, that many of these people coming in from Mexico, even though they might have their paperwork to show that they're allowed into the U.S., they could be targeted and profiled. Take a listen to this lawmaker from California.
There's a lot of fear. There's great concern. People are having to decide whether to go out on the street, whether to go to work. Tomorrow they've got to face up to whether they should take their children to school, and just genuine concerns that President Trump wants to carry through on his promise to engage in the largest mass removal of immigrants from this country.
Now, 2 other major executive orders that President Trump signed off among his first executive orders from taking office. Number one is he's reinstated his so-called Remain in Mexico policy. And this was a policy from his first term where he would keep asylum claimants on the other side of the border until their claims were processed and before they could see a U.S. citizenship judge. That has been put in place. The former Biden administration revoked that policy, saying it was inhumane and it created violence along the southern border on the Mexico side, making migrants vulnerable to cartels. Well, Trump is pushing ahead again, and once again, we're seeing advocacy groups vowing to take them to court. Another major change that we've seen happen since Trump signed these executive orders is he's basically shut down what's called the CBP One app. That was also installed by the former Biden administration to provide asylum seekers an app to book appointments with U.S. Citizenship officials. They would book appointments and then go across the border to have their hearings, a more orderly way for them to enter the border and apply for asylum. Trump canceled that, and many migrants just across the border looked at their app yesterday, moments after Trump took office, seeing the notification that their appointments had been canceled. So a lot of big changes and a lot of court challenges we're bracing for now that these executive orders are in place.
And we're not even a full day into the presidency just yet. We know that also one of the notes or changes that we saw there mentioned by Donald Trump was plans to end birthright citizenship. What more can you tell us on that front?
Yeah, that's another big one, a big policy that Trump had promised in 2016, 2020, and now he's enacted it as an executive order on his first day in office. Birthright citizenship is a practice where people who aren't from the U.S. have their child deliver their baby on U.S. soil, and therefore they become automatic American citizens. This is protected by the 14th Amendment, so we can expect perhaps more legal challenges on this policy going forward. In many cities, Miami and New York and so forth, it's become a bit of a cottage industry where people would come mostly from Eastern Europe, have their child in the hospitals in the U.S., and they become automatic American citizen. Trump has signed an executive order to do away with that. As I said, is protected by the Constitution, the 14th Amendment, so expect some major legal challenges on this executive order.
Richard, thanks for this. That is the CBC's Richard Madden at the southern border in McAllen, Texas.
Yes, I want to give an update about the birthright citizenship. Today, a federal judge in Seattle, of all places, imagine that, blocked it, and said it's unconstitutional. So that's one of the executive orders that is now being challenged, and that was it was on the request I'm reading by the Washington State Attorney General, along with three other Democrat-led states. So
Yes.
there's the first challenge. It will go up to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. I don't know what's going to happen at that point. Maybe it'll end up with the Supreme Court.
Yeah, it's we talked about before Trump was inaugurated. We went through some of the things that they were planning to do for immigration, and that was the one thing that I pointed out would be the most difficult, and that's just based on history. I mean, this was something that he talked about last time. It's something that has pretty much always been something America does. If a child is born in America, they automatically become a citizen. And so there's going to be this debate. It's going to be hashed out, this 14th Amendment, because people interpret it differently. So some people feel that the 14th Amendment does not mean people that are in the country illegally that give birth. They, some people are saying that's how they interpret it. So I think eventually this will go to the Supreme Court. It'll be hashed out by the Supreme Court, and, they'll interpret it the way they believe it's supposed to be. So that's the one that is definitely the policy that's going to be the most difficult to implement.
Yeah, and ICE raids, warp speed. It's one media outlet's calling it warp speed. What's going on with this warp speed? Operation Warp Speed?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what we got going on here? Massive ICE raids. I mean, apparently they're going to homes, works of businesses that are harboring illegals, churches. Warp speed. And it seems like they're going in now and starting to arrest, and clips are coming out. But let's play the clip on the warp speed about these arrests going on.
So the Pentagon now deployed 1,500 troops to help secure the U.S.-Mexico border.
And ICE moving at warp speed, arresting hundreds of illegal immigrants accused of serious crimes.
Griff Jenkins is in Washington with more. Hey, Griff.
Hey, good morning, guys. And Ainsley, you mentioned promises made, promises kept. Well, guess what? Consequences are being delivered. The crackdown has begun. President Trump could deploy, actually, as many as 10,000 active duty troops to the southern border. And while they may not engage in law enforcement, they will be engaging in protecting our border, including the use of military transport planes for deportation flights. Now, a Marine official telling Fox News this, quote, "Our response will be immediate. We are going in ready to respond. If the cartels shoot at us, we will not stand by. We will be taking whatever equipment we would send if a Marine Expeditionary Unit or MEU were deploying overseas." Now, the 1,500 soldiers and Marines deploying right now represent a 60% increase from the already 2,500 that are there, and it comes as ICE's enforcement and removal officers have been hitting the streets across the country, launching early morning raids targeting some 700,000 criminal illegal aliens that have been roaming free under the Biden-Harris administration, protected in sanctuary cities like Boston. In fact, ICE has racked up more than 460 arrests in the first 33 hours since Trump took office. He sat down in the Oval Office last night with Hannity for his first interview and had this to say.
We talk Venezuela, that's a big abuser, but these are countries from
Iran,
the
Syria?
Congo, countries that you don't even think of, that much more than South America.
Now, here's the important note. Countries like Venezuela, where Trinidad comes from, or Iran, that harbors terrorists, they're recalcitrant countries, guys, meaning they don't currently take their citizens back. But President Trump told me last month, point blank, in Mar-a-Lago, he said they'll take them back or face economic consequences. Guys?
So, Griff, it sounds like up to 10,000 troops are going to be eventually heading down within the next period of days or weeks to our southern border. The Washington Post has got some juicy details, though. They say that Border Patrol agents are going to block migrants on the grounds that they have passed through countries where communicable diseases are present. They're going to say, you can't come in because you might have something. And they're also, even though they're going to try to claim asylum, now under this new executive order that they're apparently working on, only 2 people in the federal government will be able to allow them to be released into the country to asylum seekers. One is Mike Banks, the new chief of Border Patrol, and his deputy. So only 2 people. That means the flow is going to just stop immediately.
It sure will. And what you're talking about are, we have seen for the past 4 years, Steve, the notice to appear, where they just release them, particularly when they don't have any place to put them because so many thousands were coming. But ultimately, it is the asylum, the remove in Mexico or migrant protection protocols that has been reinstated, meaning that you have to go back to the country where you just came from, meaning in this case, Mexico, to wait for your asylum to play out. But under the Immigration and Nationality Act from 1965, there's a clause, 212F. You're going to hear a lot about that in the coming days because that gives broad authority to simply block and deny anyone from coming across to try and claim asylum on U.S. soil. And that is really the crux of what the Washington Post and what others are talking about. And if you do indeed bolster and supplement your force with these active duty U.S. military troops, you can stop the gaps in places like California, Arizona, and elsewhere where you don't have the Texas DPS with miles of razor wire and extra forces. You're going to reinforce blocking entry. And so that is going to be something that we're going to see play out in the very near future.
Griff, what about the wall?
What's that?
What about the wall? Has he said anything about starting to build again?
Well, you're already seeing the wall, the states like Texas saying we're ready to start moving right now. And there was already an effort underway to get back some of those wall materials that were being auctioned off. I think we'll probably see the White House or President Trump in the very near future talk about exactly what pieces of wall and where they can put them. It's a very complex problem because it's not like you just build a wall and a line, but you can rest assured that Border Patrol Chief Mike Banks has got his people already looking at the most strategic areas to get wall up as fast as possible.
And Griff, real quick, you guys that you talk to, what if they say is the big difference this week than previous weeks? Have they already seen a dramatic drop?
It's a great question, and they say they have been taken off the leash and they are motivated like never before to try and go out. And as one Border Patrol official told me yesterday, consequences are being delivered, and that's what they signed up to do, and they're finally doing it.
They are off the leash. A new leash on life.
Traffic is slower.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Griff.
Thank you.
All right. So here's President Trump on what was going on prior to him getting into office.
I always say to people, you always like to understand, like in a business here, you want to understand the other side. Why do they want something, et cetera, and you figure it out. And there's usually an answer, almost always. I don't understand, why does somebody want open borders? Why would anybody that likes our country, the Democrats, allow that to happen? And even now, I watch them on television, they're trying to justify it. You can't justify it. The only reason it can be is 2 reasons. You're stupid, and I don't think they're stupid. I think anybody that cheats that much and that well is not stupid. You're either stupid or you hate the country. Those are the only 2 reasons.
Sanctuary states by definition, or sanctuary cities, they're aiding and abetting in the law breaking. Okay, they're going to get federal funds.
Yeah. We're trying to get rid of them. We're trying to end them, and a lot of the people in those communities don't want them. You know, California is a big
Would
example.
you cut off their money?
I might have to do that. Sometimes that's the only thing you can do.
So that's where the big fight is going to be. I have no doubt the military is already on their way. They're going to get the resources to secure the border. So there's going to be a stop when it comes to people coming across. You're going to have to apply for asylum in the first country that you touch, or you can wait in Mexico because of Remain in Mexico. The app has been shut off. So we're going to have a flow stop. But you got people that are still here, 10 million under the last administration, and you got some states and some cities that are going to harbor these people, not going to want to cooperate. And so I predict Donald Trump is going to go after them, and you got a DOJ now that's on his side that wants to follow the law, but it's going to be litigated throughout the courts.
Well, and I talked to somebody at the DOJ last night, and what they've done is they've taken some people who were in a different department, and now they've assigned them essentially to take a look at people in these sanctuary cities, officials, and if they are hampering what the president is trying to do, figure a way to prosecute those local officials. This is completely new. Ashley Moody was the Attorney General of the great state of Florida last week. This week, she's a U.S. Senator. Here she is talking about how there is some resistance to some of these new policies.
Kudos to the Trump administration for coming out like lightning with these executive orders. It's going to go very far in trying to round up so many of these serious criminals that were released at the direction of the Biden administration. Not only did it reinstate a program that allows locals and state officials to cooperate with the federal government, it sets up Homeland Security task forces, it encourages it, but it also says, hey, DOJ lawyers and agents, if people get in your way when these task forces identify and go after these folks and try and round them up, we're not standing for it. That's a criminal violation. Obstruction of a federal function or a federal investigation, it's serious. It's a felony. You can bring criminal charges in some instances, but they've also set up litigators to go after folks, these governments and people civilly if they stand in the way, to bring actions to allow the feds to do their jobs.
It just reminded me of the wrestling match between them. Remember, Donald Trump would say sanctuary city status is revoked, then they would sue back, would end up in the courts, and then the money would have to be restored if the judge says it should be restored. That's some of the battle. My only hope is that some of these city council members are not hopelessly left and can start to read the room and understand the American people don't want illegal aliens, especially criminals, here.
Well, Donald Trump was asked about that last night by Sean, and he said, what will you do about the sanctuary cities? Will you get rid of them? And he said, the only way to do that is really to cut off their money. And also, we saw the images of the illegals being arrested. Within a 33-hour span, they arrested 460 people. So that was from midnight on Monday until 9 a.m. yesterday. There are probably more that were arrested throughout the day yesterday. But these are illegals that have criminal history. They are accused, some of them, of sexual assault, some domestic violence, drugs and weapons crimes. And Tom Homan said one of them had actually raped a child. So these are people that we don't want in our country. And I was thinking, I wish that this had happened before Laken Riley was killed. There was a little girl down in Texas, Nungaray, and you went down to Jocelyn. 460 arrests could mean that we spared 460 families from pain.
Right, and with the Lincoln Riley Act is going to be signed by the President of the United States either today or tomorrow. Under that, people who are in the country illegally, even though they've got a notice to appear or something like that, which they think is their get-out-of-jail-free card, if they do something like, and some of the violations are low level, like shoplifting and stuff like that, if they get caught under this administration and this directive and this bill, they can get sent home immediately.
There's one last component that they really have to get under control. So you get those notices appears, and sometimes those court dates are 3 years out because they just don't have the amount of judges. You got to get immigration judges confirmed. You need a slew of them to litigate these cases, present the evidence, and if these people don't qualify for asylum, then they need a final deportation notice to go back to wherever the country that they originated from. But if you just have people just sitting in limbo, then that's going to slow down the process. You got to get the immigration judges to litigate.
Well, the first thing is there's no new ones.
Yeah.
No new cases starting yesterday. So just about nobody's coming through.
I'm Steve Ducey.
Yep. Magnolia, the deportations are happening right now. Right now.
I think
Boston,
people are
Chicago,
really amazed.
Denver area.
Yeah, I think people are really amazed at the speed that everything's happening. It's pretty clear that when they said they were going to hit the ground running, they were not just saying that. It's clearly that's what's happened. So they're really not wasting any time at all. And I think everyone's like, whoa.
The Laken Riley Act was also signed today. Lawmakers, Mike Johnson signed it in the Oval Office.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's kind of been in the works for a while. And they actually had some Democrats, I believe, that voted against it, surprisingly. But I have another clip here that I got. This is Stephen Miller. He's one of Trump's policy advisors, senior policy advisor. He's a hardliner on immigration. That's what people know him for. So he went on and did an interview and pretty much laid out the whole plan and goes over all the different agencies that are involved in these operations and exactly what they're planning to do.
Immigration raids have already arrested and removed some of the most vicious criminals in this country, including child pornography cases, homicide cases, sexual assault, attacks on children. And this is just the very beginning in the effort to liberate this country from the migrant criminal threat. In the coming days, you're going to see a massive scale up in enforcement activities all across the country to dismantle these criminal networks. And not only is it going to be ICE engaging these raids, but also they're going to have support from their law enforcement partners in FBI, ATF, DEA, and U.S. Marshals. We're going to leverage the full power of federal law enforcement at President Trump's command and direction to save this country from this occupation. You're also going to see, as you mentioned, the Department of Justice pursuing civil and, if necessary, criminal charges against anybody who shelters or harbors criminal aliens. That includes individuals in sanctuary cities who are harboring violent and dangerous criminals from federal law enforcement. The tables have turned, and now those who protect criminal aliens are going to face the legal consequences that exist in statute. And at the border, as you've mentioned, the military is en route. They are mobilizing active duty, National Guard, as well as a massive effort to engage in military construction along the southern border to impede and deny the entry of illegal aliens and to send anyone who crosses home, or if they've engaged in criminal activity, they also may face significant criminal prosecution. So every instrument, every lever of federal power is being deployed to crush the cartels, dismantle the gangs, seal off the border, halt the invasion, and send the illegals home.
ATF, FBI,
yeah,
all these different agencies are all cooperating together along with ICE to start rounding people up. Mass deportations on a scale we have never seen in our lifetime.
Yeah. Our WR Poker said, "I'm so happy I'm doing the Trump dance right now." Yeah. I think most people are very relieved about this. I've also seen some stuff about how they're encouraging people to report illegals. Have you seen that too?
I have, and I've heard that it was similar, and there's a number being thrown out. They're $750. If you report an illegal and they find them, you get $750. Now I don't know that I'm seeing that get spread around that number. I don't know the truth to that, but it's definitely going around. It's interesting because it matches $750, how much the Biden administration was paying people FEMA, the FEMA for people that had hurricane damage. They were getting a whopping $750. But I'm hearing if you turn an illegal in, you get $750.
Yeah, I heard that about the money. I don't know if the money part of it's true or not. But there is a tip line for DHS. It's 866 DHS to ICE, and that is a tip line that you can use to report criminal activity by illegal immigrants. And they give a whole list. If you go to ice.gov/tipline, they give a whole list of examples like drug smuggling, COVID-19 fraud, child exploitation, gang-related crimes, human trafficking, money laundering. There's a whole list of things that they have here as examples that you can call and report.
Gotcha. So what's going on in the cities, Magnolia?
Well, they're carrying out operations every day.
Let's share what's going on in one of the cities. Maybe Bill Malusian's report. Bill Malusian with Fox News has been embedded with the ICE in the Boston, Massachusetts area. And wow, they've been rounding people up.
Yeah, let me see if I have this one.
Been rounding people up. Night raids, morning raids, even in the daytime. They're rounding people up. And I think this is going to just be all like sanctuary cities is no more. I really think it's no more. Especially when the federal government's telling these individuals, mayors, governors, city council people, aldermen, whoever, if you support sanctuary cities, you yourself could be subjected to being arrested and prosecuted for harboring illegals.
Yeah, it looks like Fox News has been doing these ride-alongs. We have a couple cities. Here's the one for Boston. And it's freezing cold in Boston right now, but they are out there first thing in the morning.
It's a frigid 5 degrees in the pre-dawn hours just outside of Boston, where this team of elite ICE officers is briefing on their targets for the day.
We're going to be targeting some extremely violent offenders today.
Within moments, the officers are on the move, with eyes on their first target.
Looks like we got movement, target vehicle coming out.
They quickly take him into custody. He's an MS-13 gang member wanted in El Salvador for aggravated murder. And he has an Interpol red notice out for his arrest.
We are targeting very violent threats to our community.
I'm not going back to Haiti.
One of those threats is this illegal alien from Haiti. ICE says he's a gang member with 17 criminal convictions in recent years.
So, you feel me? Yo, Biden forever, bro. Thank Obama for everything that he did for me, bro.
ICE Boston quickly takes down its next targets, including this illegal alien from Brazil who has an Interpol red notice for armed robbery. This Salvadoran illegal alien charged locally with rape and released by a sanctuary jurisdiction.
Señor, ¿cómo se llama?
And this Dominican illegal alien charged with assault with a deadly weapon and heroin trafficking. Officers also arrested this Guatemalan MS-13 gang member facing gun charges. ICE says he was released from local custody just the day before. Their detainer request was ignored because of sanctuary policies. And in a sign of shifting priorities with the new Trump administration, this man, who was in the same apartment as the target, was also arrested after ICE determined he's also in the U.S. illegally. This is what ICE calls collateral.
So you guys got your main target just now, but you got somebody else. What just happened?
So our main target was released by a sanctuary jurisdiction, not honoring a detainer. That person was released back into the community, and when we went to go find him, he's with somebody else who was previously removed from the United States. So he's going to go today too.
And that is exactly what Border Czar Tom Homan has warned would happen.
When we find the bad guy, he's probably with others that are in the United States illegally. They may not be a criminal priority, but we're not walking away from them.
ICE Boston says they will continue to go into sanctuary jurisdictions and do their job.
Today was a good day. Today we took several significant public safety threats out of our communities. Unfortunately, a lot were released by sanctuary policies, but we're here to tell the Commonwealth and the rest of the country that we're going to find them whether they're released or not.
And guys, shortly after we finished filming, ICE Boston told us they arrested 2 more targets in other parts of town away from our cameras. One of those targets is a previously deported Honduran illegal alien who was arrested for raping a woman while putting a gun in her mouth. The other target they got is a Haitian man who first flew into the United States in 2023 as part of President Biden's controversial migrant flights mass parole program. Well, they just picked him up yesterday because he's been arrested locally for sexual assault. We'll send it back to you.
Bill Malugin, it was fascinating to watch all of that. I think I was just saying to Bill, this is terrible for Joe Biden and the legacy that he tried to leave behind. A question from me, how soon will they actually be leaving the country? Does that take a long time?
It depends what country they're from. If they're from cooperable countries like El Salvador, Guatemala, countries like that, it can be quick. It can be within days or weeks. If it's countries that are harder to deport, countries that don't cooperate with the U.S. as much, it can go into a process of months. But the Trump administration is changing policies with something called expedited removal. The bottom line is people at home don't need to understand all the policies. The Trump administration is just going to work as fast as they can to get all the people you just saw on camera there out of the country as fast as possible. They're also going to use their State Department, now led by Marco Rubio, to put pressure on countries that don't cooperate with the U.S. as much when it comes to those deportations.
Bill, just two points of clarification here. It seems a lot of these crimes are associated with sex crimes. I'm just looking at the list a bit earlier today. I don't know if that generally is the case or not. And second, if Boston's a sanctuary city, how are they allowed to do this? Because we told there would be resistance.
Boston doesn't have to cooperate with ICE, but there's nothing they can do to stop ICE from coming into their city and enforcing the law. And that's exactly what happened yesterday. And that's the point ICE makes to us is, look, they don't have to cooperate with our detainer requests. They don't have to tell our officers when they're releasing somebody from jail. But we're going to do our job. We have our intel guys out in the field. We have people with eyes all over the place, and we're going to snatch those guys. So they can make ICE's job more difficult, longer, and more dangerous, but it's not going to stop ICE from doing the job, guys. The bottom line is ICE says it's safer for everybody involved if locals would just hand these guys over in jail once they're arrested, but they don't. They let them out onto the streets. They don't tell ICE about it, so ICE has to spend a lot of resources gathering intel, finding these guys, and then going out into the community to do arrests, which could be dangerous. You saw that combative Haitian man, and then you saw in the case of that one MS-13 member, his friend got snagged. They weren't even looking for him. They were looking for the MS-13 guy. They picked him up because a sanctuary jurisdiction released the MS-13 guy. ICE found him and then found the guy who was in the apartment with. They found out he was an illegal alien as well. So now he's going to be deported too.
Wow.
Amazing. Bill Malugin, thank you so much. More to come on that.
Thank you, Bill.
Illegals flock together like birds of a feather. Illegals flock together. Usually the case, you know, these illegals are probably in some sort of stash house or some sort of place that they're all staying in. It's a group of them.
Yeah.
So as Homan said, you know, pretty much you go and find one that's wanted and then you'll find more with them.
Yeah. So that's actually making it, I guess, a little bit easier. He said that case specifically that they were just talking about there in Boston, they went to round up someone, a criminal, and they found someone with him who had already been deported previously. So he was someone who left the country and came back again, similar to Lake and Riley's killer. Actually, I have the clip of the Lake and Riley Act being signed. I think it's a pretty short clip. But that happened yesterday, and we talked about that when we were doing our Snowmageddon lives. We mentioned that and what it means. It says that certain illegal immigrants that are here and committing certain crimes need to be deported, which seems logical. Seems like everyone would be on board with that, right? However, there's a few Democrat politicians that did not sign or did not vote for this, but it did pass pretty overwhelmingly, and it was signed into law today.
It could be a lot with just the delegation, Georgia delegation. Oh, just but no family.
Do a little fast forwarding. Photo ops.
Hey, Corinne. I was saying closer. You guys can get in a little bit tighter, if that's okay. Is that better? Is that better for you all?
Either way.
Yep.
I'll wait on you, Margaret.
Let me just say, as we're here today, that we're really grateful.
All right, now, the next Congress, the one of you has to have the first vote. We got the 118, we got the 119, now we got the 120.
Thank you,
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you.
That's right. We need a
So the Lake and Riley Act.
Yep, there we go.
Signed. It's a bill requiring undocumented immigrants who are arrested for theft or violent crimes to be held in jail pending trial. The bill, named after Lake and Riley, the Georgia nursing student murdered last year by a Venezuelan man, passed the House of Representatives a day after it was approved by the Senate.
Yeah, so this specifically would have, if we had this before, it would have saved Lake and Riley's life, because the illegal migrant that killed her is someone who had been arrested multiple times for various crimes, violent crimes, theft, things like that. And yet he was continuously released back onto the streets and made his way to Georgia, where he committed the murder. So it's really crafted around what happened to her, but it's pretty awesome to see this come to pass. You know, from the time that we started covering the Lake and Riley case, you know, and we knew pretty quickly that he was an illegal immigrant. And so just to see, you know, he has been convicted, sentenced to life in prison, and now this is the end result. So hopefully this will save other people. I think it most certainly will. And I can't see any reason for people not to sign it. But one reason that some of the Democrats gave is that they're afraid it would lead to racial profiling and things like that. But, you know, when you're talking about it's not just her killer, there's a lot of people just like him in this country. And, you know, we see it all the time. Maybe today they're doing an armed robbery, but tomorrow they're doing a murder. So you can't just keep letting these types of people out on the street. And that's what they're doing in these major cities.
Well, Venezuela is one of those countries that do not accept flights back. So one of the problems under the Biden administration was a lot of Venezuelans that commit crimes around the country. Law enforcement has no choice but to kick them back out because ICE can't do nothing. ICE at the time couldn't do nothing with them even if there's nowhere to deport them back because the country wouldn't accept them back. But now I think with the Trump administration, they're working out something with other countries to take them and accept them.
Yes.
So they can be deported.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's logistically, it gets tricky. So those are the things, you know, you have to plan ahead for things like that. And it sounds like this administration has done that. The people that are on the different teams and the task forces, things like that, they're pretty in sync with what's going on. And you can tell that they think things through. Because it's like it's not enough to say, oh yeah, we're going to deport all these people. You have to think about the other side of that. Where are you actually going to send them? It's a lot easier said than done. So it does sound like they have plans. There's different countries they're talking to that may be able to take some of these people back. But you know, Venezuela, I don't know. Like, I don't know how long they're going to be able to keep that up, though, on their part. Like, how can they just say, oh, we're not going to take them back? I can imagine some pressure being put on Venezuela to take them back and put them in their prisons or whatever it is that they do there. But for now, that's the way it is. So we'll see if anything changes.
Send them to Gitmo.
Yeah.
Send them to Gitmo.
Yep. But we've had other, you know, another town, another city that's been really hit hard, and some people may say even the hardest per capita, is Denver. Denver, you know, we've talked about for over a year, I think, about the way that the migrant crisis has crippled their city. They're having problems with their hospitals because they're just paying for all these things. You would think that they would be relieved to have some help from the federal government, but so far it sounds like they're going to continue to push back at least as much as they can. It's, again, to me, it's really crazy. If you're a city leader, why would you want to have criminals? Why would you knowingly harbor criminals in your city that are harming citizens? Why would you want that? I think it's very suspicious that they would bend over backwards to harbor legitimate criminals who have been arrested. A lot of times they've been convicted.
I think they've been compromised by the cartels.
yeah, that has to be the only explanation, because why else, as a city leader, a state leader, why would you intentionally have your city full of criminals? The only thing that makes sense is their compromise, like you said. But yeah, so Denver is getting ready for this. Let's see what they're saying. I wonder if they have their their line of moms formed yet. Remember, he said he was going to
He
have a
said
line of mama bears stand in front of
Denverites.
ICE.
He said Denverites, didn't he? Didn't he call them
Yeah.
Denverites? Locking arms to prevent
And
ICE from
mama
coming in.
bears. Yeah,
Yeah.
he claimed that the mama bears would oppose this.
Ain't no mama bears opposing that. He's ridiculous. He's absolutely ridiculous and talking crap.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Donald Trump now in office, the city of Denver is bracing for potential deportation.
So Denver 7's Brandon Richard talked to Denver's Mayor Mike Johnson today about how the city is preparing to respond.
This could be a very complicated and, we think, heartbreaking situation.
Denver Mayor Mike Johnson believes President Trump's mass deportation plan was designed to sow chaos and disrupt communities.
Sir, this is a proclamation declaring a national emergency.
He says that's why it's important the city have a plan to respond.
We've been working on this since Election Day, so we knew as soon as the presidential election results were in that we were going to have to start preparing.
The mayor says his four-part plan ensures the city follows the law and upholds its values. He says the city will cooperate with ICE when it comes to violent criminals and provide basic information, like when they're set to be released from jail.
So if Mike Johnson's scheduled to be released Thursday, we notify ICE. He'll be released between 2 and 4 p.m. on Thursday. They could pick him up at that time, but we don't honor detainers. We won't hold someone for ICE. We won't proactively report them, but if they ask us for someone that we're releasing, we'll notify them.
He says Denver police will provide limited support to federal authorities, like making sure protests don't get out of control. But he says they won't be involved in arresting non-criminal immigrants.
That's not our job. Our officers have enough to do in the city. They don't need to be doing federal law enforcement's job on immigration.
The Trump administration is getting rid of policies that kept ICE agents from arresting immigrants near schools, churches, and hospitals. Johnston called it immoral and said the city would oppose efforts to arrest people at those locations.
There's been a long-held bipartisan practice that those spaces ought to be protected. So I think we would push back. We would take them to court. We would look to get injunctions against that kind of practice.
The final part of the mayor's plan focuses on helping children whose parents are arrested, making sure they have a safe place to go or are reunited with other family members.
We're hoping that that doesn't come to pass, but we have to prepare for the worst case scenario, which is kids and families will be separated. We will have kids without parents who need to find their way into foster care or to connected families or back to home countries, in some cases home countries that won't take them back. So,
Brandon Richards in the studio for us. Brandon, you also spoke with Governor Polis about how the state perhaps will respond, and also, interestingly, to city officials in Aurora. Of course, Aurora is the namesake of President Trump's mass deportation plan, Operation Aurora. So what did you hear today?
Well, the governor told me that the state would welcome any help from the federal government, especially when it comes to going after criminals, but he says he does not support breaking up families or targeting those with pending legal status. Aurora city leaders said that they don't have a federal immigration function, but would work with federal partners and follow federal law and directives as they apply to the community. But they said until they can review any new plans from the Trump administration, it would be inappropriate to speculate on next steps.
All right, it is a new day. Brandon Richard, thanks for your work on this tonight.
Operation Aurora.
Yeah, that's a big one. You know, I actually heard recently that one of those apartment complexes in Aurora that we watched the migrant gangs taking over, at least one of those apartment buildings is being shut down completely.
There you go. The thing about it is, in that situation, then it makes it maybe harder for ICE because these people scatter like cockroaches. Harder to locate. Go underground. Where do they all go? If you shut down these apartments, why don't you just keep the apartments open and give ICE the chance to go in there and round people up?
Yeah, and he's like, well, if they ask us, we'll tell them. when they're going to be released, but we're not going to honor any ICE detainers or anything like that. We're not going to do anything proactive in this situation. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting. And then Pritzker, I guess also, Governor Pritzker also said something similar, but I don't think that's going to cut it. We'll see. We'll see how it goes for them.
Any questions from members of the media? We got Shia in front here.
Governor, and I'm hoping Mayor Johnson and Emanuel can follow up. Mayor Johnson, Emanuel, and the governor, I'm wondering if you could talk about Donald Trump's attempts to dismantle DEI, given this setting that we're in, and what kind of effect, trickle-down effect it might have in state government or in the corporate world.
Well, DEI is, this idea of, a corporate term that occurs in, the back rooms of big corporations, Wall Street and otherwise. The reality is that what they're trying to tear down is something much broader, and that's civil rights in the United States. That's what they're attacking. And the reality is, and I thought that former Mayor Emanuel said it correctly, the examples of the success of DEI are all around us in the city of Chicago, that we need to raise up businesses in communities that have been left out and left behind. There are examples all across the state of Illinois. Investments that need to be made in communities that are, frankly, underrepresented, underserved, and struggle. And yet we've been succeeding in Illinois, lifting up those businesses. But what the federal government is trying to do is attack what we've accomplished in Illinois and all across the United States. And we won't let them. I am not going to let them. And I'm unafraid to stand up for equity, which is what we're here celebrating today. Look at the success of the Will Group. Look at the success that's happening on the west side of Chicago. Yeah, sorry, I saw Marianne. Yeah. I don't have an update for you. The federal government has not communicated with the state of Illinois. That is an indication to all of you that it's all about chaos and confusion. It is not about accomplishing something. And I've said many times, violent criminals who are undocumented in this country should be deported. There is a federal law that allows that deportation. But when we're talking about undocumented people who have been living law-abiding lives and raising families in the United States, we need comprehensive immigration reform. We need to give them an opportunity to stay in this country legally. That's clearly not something that Donald Trump believes in. And I will stand up for residents of the state of Illinois who are abiding by the law, who are holding down jobs, who are paying taxes. I mean, we should stand up for them. That is the right thing to do. But he's trying to tear things down.
Governor, what's the response to people who might say that Democrats are the one sowing chaos, confusion, and fear-mongering when talking about mass deportations that haven't even happened in Chicago, like we see potentially happen?
What are you talking about? They are literally threatening people all across the country. How can you say that we're overreacting somehow? We're not. They're the ones, I'm talking about Donald Trump and his administration, Tom Homan, people at the Department of Homeland Security. They're the ones that are threatening people, again, who are law-abiding, who are often the anchors of their communities, who are paying taxes in this country. They're the ones who are threatening people. We're just standing up for people who live in our state and in our city.
Governor,
yeah.
So the amount of money you're spending here, and by the way, great. This is a great achievement by Mr. Davis. Great work here.
Yeah, it's really the achievement of the entrepreneurs that should be celebrated. Yeah.
But rather than spending that amount of money, focusing here, the amount of money that you've spent on harboring illegals over the last 4 years and protecting them now, and after Mayor Johnson's email that just went out yesterday saying they're going to spend more money on protecting illegals at the expense of the American citizens, in particular the west side and the south side. We've got representatives here, we've got Bob Israel here. Why not invest that money there? And then the second question is...
No, sit down. I'm going to answer that question. Now, we're going to move on. We're going to move on. Let me answer. I'm going to answer your question. The money that we spend in the state of Illinois is about protecting the residents of the state of Illinois. That is what it is about. We will stand up for anybody who is standing up for the law. We follow the law in the state of Illinois. I'm very concerned that Donald Trump and the federal government is not going to be following the law. Indeed, they have proposed getting rid of birthright citizenship. For many families, imagine, I mean, my own family, many families that came to this country years ago, right, who have made successful lives over many years, that opportunity would be completely cut off. It's unconstitutional what they're suggesting. It's in the Constitution that we protect birthright citizenship. We all ought to stand up for the Constitution. This president does not.
Why don't you collaborate with the drug library, the Venezuelans? Why don't you collaborate with ICE, with the drug library, the Venezuelans?
Question over here. Thank you. We're going to protect the residents and the people of the city of Chicago. As a welcoming city, as a sanctuary state, our welcoming city ordinance, alongside of the complementary law of the Illinois Trust Act, is full demonstration of our commitment to protect the residents of this city. Any notion that would use public spaces like churches and schools, these sanctities, these sanctuaries, as a way to create political divide is not only unconscionable, but it's reprehensible. And what we have done, we have given very clear instructions to our sister agencies in all of our city departments that they should and will and are expected to uphold our welcoming city ordinance. We are not going to interfere, but we're certainly not going to cooperate with that type of abhorrent behavior. Yes, ma'am.
What is your direct message to immigrants here in the city of Chicago during this time of very much uncertainty in terms of possible immigration or deportation?
I'm going to speak to our immigrant population as well as the entire city of Chicago. The city of Chicago and the state of Illinois, we are a welcoming city and we are a sanctuary city. We are a sanctuary and welcoming state. That has not changed because of who won the election. And that's not going to change. What I can speak to in a far more broader way, that any of the measures that the president is looking to execute against working people in the city of Chicago, we will defend our city. It's just that simple. We will defend their rights to have a high quality public education. He is working to dismantle the Department of Education. We will defend our rights to protect our environment. He's a president who does not believe in environmental justice and climate change. We will defend our rights to continue to build more affordable homes. I will say this last thing. The president has the level of power that other administrations wish they had. The House of Representatives, the United States Senate, the judicial branch of government. If he's serious about making America a place where every single individual can have an opportunity, then he should use his authority to work with the city of Chicago to build more affordable homes. He has the ability to help invest in building more economic opportunities like you're experiencing right here on the west side of the city of Chicago. We are going to defend the interests of working people, and we're very proud to do that. Thank you all very much.
What about the illegals that are victimizing the citizens?
They cut off Ben Berquin. Ben Berquin was following him, pounding him with questions. Chicago. That was they had another. They were talking about some issue today, and then they took a bunch of questions about, Trump's plan and deportations in the city. and whatnot. Very, very interesting that the governor said that the Trump administration, ICE, none of them have been communicating with them at all. But why should they when they've made it clear that they're a sanctuary city and for years have been calling out, Trump and saying they're not going to comply with anything and all immigrants are welcome in Chicago and the state of Illinois?
Well, the reason that the Trump administration, if that's even true, I find it hard to believe that no one from the Trump administration reached out. But if they really didn't, then it's probably because they're targets of a criminal investigation.
Yeah. Or they're afraid they're going to tip people off, too. Tip them off.
Well, they don't trust them. They're being targeted to be arrested because, Tom Homan has said many times, if you're a city leader and you're harboring these criminals, we're going to come after you. That's what they've said. Now, one thing that irritates me, though, about all this, thankfully we don't have too many of these renegades out here. I think Johnson and Pritzker are definitely two of the worst. But one thing that irritates me when they talk about this, like when they just did the press conference, they continue to bring up things that are not even being talked about. No one in the Trump administration has said ever that they're going to go round up innocent working class immigrants that are here seeking asylum. No one has ever said that. Not once. It's never been a discussion. I've never heard anyone from the Trump administration say we're going to go round up families and we're going to separate and we're going to take the kids and we're going to put them in foster care and we're going to, people that are paying taxes and doing their jobs, we're going to go rip them out of their homes and deport them. I've never heard that even said. It's not even being discussed. So they keep bringing this up because it's what people always, the term you hear, straw man argument. It's a straw man argument to defend what they're doing in their state. It's not reality. It's not what we're even talking about. We're not having these conversations. What we're talking about is violent criminals who continue to commit crimes in our country that they're not even supposed to be in the first place. That's what we're talking about. And if they have a problem with that, then there's something more sinister and serious going on. They're trying to use this fake argument that Trump is going to just target everyone who's here for a better life. I mean, Donald Trump actually has angered his own supporters many times recently by saying that he fully supports legal immigration. He has said it repeatedly. He doubled and tripled down on it, in fact, with the H-1B policy that he is in favor of. So the things that have been said, the plans that are being made are directly in opposition of what they continue to say in these press conferences and these sound bites with the media. And Mike Johnson in Denver does it too. He makes this argument that we're going to protect the undocumented, and they're trying to do is they're trying to play on sympathy and emotions and things like that. But the realistic, what it actually means, we've talked about a million times. They're making money off of this. And if anyone thinks they're not, you're very naive, because there's a million ways to make money from the migrant crisis, and they're doing it. That's what's happening here. He made a reference to, you heard Brandon Johnson use a term, our sister agencies.
Yep.
What does that even mean? I'll tell you what it means. It means a series of these little nonprofits and 501c3s, these different government agencies that they make up overnight, and they say, oh, we're going to have this government agency to work with migrants with children. So the minute you set up something like that, guess what? It has to be funded. So they're pouring money into that stuff. There's a million ways that they can make money off of this for their cities. the downside is that they are spending a lot of taxpayer dollars on it at the same time. And you have to be able to balance that. They're not balancing it. They're basically prioritizing undocumented immigrants at the expense of their own citizens. And that's why every time Brandon Johnson gets up to do a press conference, he gets shouted down because they're sick of it. They're sick of it. They can't stand him in Chicago. No one likes him. Even the local media there, you heard them being hostile back towards them, calling them out. No one likes what's going on here. And so I really do think that there are some type of behind the scenes, something we don't know about just yet, that they're being investigated as a target for criminal prosecution.
Particularly Brandon Johnson. I think if any of the politicians they're going to make an example out of, I think it's going to be Brandon Johnson. I have my money on Brandon Johnson. Which one? Because I've seen some things, for instance, and we're going to talk a little bit more about Boston, but it seems like the governor of Massachusetts now on board with ICE deporting criminals. She's kind of changing tone now, backpedaling. The Colorado governor says that he's in support of illegals that commit crimes being deported. And even Pritzker there, if you listen to Pritzker, he will even said himself, well, no one supports criminals, people in here in the country, criminals. And I'm supportive of criminals being deported. But then he takes it right into the families and stuff and thinks for some reason Trump's going to target families and things like that. And so far with these ICE raids, I don't see families getting rounded up. I see these men that, been in jails or gang members, MS-13, Tren de Aragua, the criminals.
Yeah.
We're not seeing poor women in handcuffs and children crying, being deported. I haven't seen it. And in all these raids, I doubt any of them were children.
Right. No, and it's not even a discussion. It's not a priority. When you talk about mass deportations, people who are here legitimately going through the process are not even on the list. They're not even on the list to be deported because we do have legal immigration in America. You can rightfully apply for asylum and you can go through that process. We have that process in place. And so for people who legitimately came in with a valid asylum claim, valid being the key phrase, those people are not even on the list. They're not a priority. They're at the very bottom. It's not happening. So for them to keep bringing it up is just extremely disingenuous.
Yeah, it just seems like it's politicians that support sanctuary cities. That's their excuse by saying that somehow fear-mongering and saying it's going to apply to women and children, when the Trump administration actually has been very transparent with their plans on who they're deporting. It's the criminals. It's the ones in the jail. It's the ones that had the judges already determined that they can't be here anymore. There's 700,000.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in the cities that we're talking about, typically what happens, like if someone gets arrested, whether it's, whether they're a burglary suspect or something like that, typically they're getting arrested, they're getting thrown in jail, but they're not really given any bail. It's like they're just kind of let back out onto the street. And this just happens over and over and over again. It's completely ridiculous. These people shouldn't be here. It's common sense. If you have criminals, they don't belong in your city. They don't belong in our country. So why would you go out of your way to block this? Why would you not, Mike Johnson sitting there saying, oh yeah, well, if they ask us about a certain person, we'll let them know what their release date is, but we're not going to just help them. We're not going to help this process at all. That's just ridiculous. You're obstructing federal law.
Yeah. We have a clip. Chicago braces for mass deportations. We'll stay with Chicago for a minute.
Yeah.
Chicago.
Lots of questions from city leaders in sanctuary cities as President Trump's immigration plan officially gets underway.
By invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, I will direct our government to use the full and immense power of federal and state law enforcement to eliminate the presence of all foreign gangs and criminal networks, bringing devastating crime to U.S. soil, including our cities and inner cities.
Well, leaders in cities like Chicago doubling down, insisting that they will not cooperate with deportations. Chicago police saying state law does not allow them to aid immigration agents. So let's bring in News Nation's Alex Capriello, who is live for us in Chicago. Alex, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker has been outspoken against the president's new orders. What is he saying?
Yeah, Governor Pritzker has struck the same tone over the last few days ever since news broke that Chicago might be one of the very first sanctuary cities where we see ICE agents actually perform those mass deportations. The governor says that he'll continue to protect immigrant rights regardless of their actual immigration status, and that he believes that what the federal authorities are doing all across the nation is both unconstitutional and unlawful. One official speaking anonymously over the weekend said federal immigration officers will target some 300 immigrants right here in the city of Chicago that have criminal backgrounds. At the same time, we're seeing immigration advocacy groups actually go ahead and try to share advice that they might have with undocumented immigrants here in Chicago. For example, they're saying if you are afraid and you see ICE agents at your door, you do not need to open that door unless they have a search warrant. Also suggesting that people go out there and memorize their loved ones' phone numbers just in the event that an ICE agent goes and seizes their cell phones. Nicole.
And Alex, there's a memo that went out to Chicago police officers reminding them about not only local but also state laws that they must follow. What all does that memo say?
Yeah, that's right, Nicole. News Nation has obtained that memo given out to CPD officers, reminding them about the municipal code as well as what they're calling the Welcoming City Ordinance from Mayor Brandon Johnson, which says that officers cannot assist with enforcing immigration law, cannot stop, arrest, or detain someone based solely on their immigration status, and cannot coordinate with the turnover of someone in custody of ICE agents. But that being said, that memo says that CPD officers are, of course, responsible for enforcing the law regardless of someone's immigration status. So if they see a crime occurring, of course, they must stop that while it's happening. Nicole.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com.
So there you go. You know what's interesting? Again, a lot of media are in Chicago right now. So I think they feel like a lot of the images are going to start coming out with these deportations out of Chicago. We actually have a clip of a raid that's going now viral on Twitter of ICE going to a home in Chicago and rounding people up. Let's share that. That's wild here.
Aquí al lado de mi casa, señores. Con migración. Ay, Diosito. Ay, Diosito.
There you go.
Aquí al lado de
So, going to the door, telling the person they got a warrant.
They're literally dragging them out.
He's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You got a warrant. You got a warrant for your arrest.
We're going to carry him.
I think we're going to see a lot more of this in Chicago.
That's crazy.
No, it's absolutely insane. So I just think a lot of the media is there because there might be some sort of standoff between city officials and and federal government. It's cold in Chicago too, by the way. Kudos to the ICE, man, out there in Boston and Chicago doing this work, doing the Lord's work in the freezing cold. But it just seems like, the reins have, it just seems like Border Patrol agents and ICE have been liberated here. And the ones that originally signed up to be ICE agents and Border Patrol can finally do their jobs that they want to do.
Yeah, I mean, that is the purpose of ICE. So, the fact that they've been blocked from doing it for so long, they're probably glad to be able to do their job again. And we spoke to a lot of the Border Patrol agents and different things when we were on the border, and they were all demoralized by the whole situation.
Oh, they would definitely talk to me, but they would tell me to make sure I'm not filming or on camera, and they would tell me their feelings.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they want to do their job a lot. I mean, occasionally, I do think, though, and here's the problem, though, the Trump administration might face. You do have Border Patrol agents in the ranks there that are sympathetic to the migrants. You do have some. Case in point, there's some videos, in Eagle Pass of Border Patrol agents fist pumping people that are coming in after the cutting the gates to let them in, cutting the wire. So there is sympathetics, and I think I think the federal government might have to start weeding them out, because those are the types that would tip off migrants and tip off cartels and probably compromised by NGOs and compromised to share operating procedures with NGOs or cartels, and tell these migrants where to go and when not to go, or tell the migrants when Border Patrol is going to be at a certain area when they're not. So when they're not there, then they can make their move and try to sneak in as a getaway or sneak in somehow.
Yeah.
You're probably going to have to weed them out of the ranks. But I think overall, probably, I would say, this is my opinion, 80% of the people are definitely on board with these deportations. 80% of Border Patrol, I really think. But I still think there's like 20%.
Yeah, I think there's some, but I don't think that any Border Patrol agents are supportive of criminals taking over cities and these gangs and things that are happening. And if they are, then they're definitely compromised by the cartel. There's no other way to say it. So I think most of them,
or bribed by foreign governments, or bribed by NGOs, or bribed.
Well, and they get money straight from the cartel to help facilitate the flow. There's another clip that Fox did, another ride along in Boston, and there was one of the migrants was really angry about going back to Haiti, and he's like screaming about Trump. And
yeah, this one went viral.
Play that one.
This one went viral.
Now Fox was able to get exclusive access to ICE's elite team in the sanctuary city of Boston. Bill Maluzhian is there. Bill, you saw the first images of Trump's mass deportation efforts. Tell us about it.
Yeah, Brian, good morning to you. We certainly did. In the early days of this Trump administration, ICE officials tell us they're taking what they call a worst first approach, meaning they are targeting the worst of the worst criminal alien offenders first. And we were given exclusive access to ICE's elite team right here in Boston as they went out into sanctuary jurisdictions and enforced immigration law.
Good morning, everyone.
It's a frigid 5 degrees in the pre-dawn hours just outside of Boston, where this team of elite ICE officers is briefing on their targets for the day.
We're going to be targeting some extremely violent offenders today.
Within moments, the officers are on the move, with eyes on their first target.
Looks like we got movement, target vehicle coming out.
They quickly take him into custody. He's an MS-13 gang member wanted in El Salvador for aggravated murder. And he has an Interpol red notice out for his arrest.
We are targeting very violent
threats to our community.
I'm not going back to Haiti.
One of those threats is this illegal alien from Haiti. ICE says he's a gang member with 17 criminal convictions in recent years.
Trump, you feel me? Yo, Biden forever, bro. Thank Obama for everything that he did for me, bro.
ICE Boston quickly takes down its next targets, including this illegal alien from Brazil who has an Interpol red notice for armed robbery. This Salvadoran illegal alien charged locally with rape and released by a sanctuary jurisdiction.
Señor, ¿cómo se llama?
And this Dominican illegal alien charged with assault with a deadly weapon and heroin trafficking. Officers also arrested this Guatemalan MS-13 gang member facing gun charges. ICE says he was released from local custody just the day before. Their detainer request was ignored because of sanctuary policies. And in a sign of shifting priorities with the new Trump administration, this man, who was in the same apartment as the target, was also arrested after ICE determined he's also in the U.S. illegally. This is what ICE calls collateral.
So you guys got your main target just now, but you got somebody else. What just happened?
So our main target was released by a sanctuary jurisdiction, not honoring a detainer. That person was released back into the community, and when we went to go find him, he's with somebody else who was previously removed from the United States. So he's going to go today too.
And that is exactly what Border Czar Tom Homan has warned would happen.
When we find the bad guy, he's probably with others that are in the United States illegally. They may not be a criminal priority, but we're not walking away from them.
ICE Boston says they will continue to go into sanctuary jurisdictions and do their job.
Today was a good day. Today we took several significant public safety threats out of our communities. Unfortunately, a lot were released by sanctuary policies, but we're here to tell the Commonwealth and the rest of the country that we're going to find them whether they're released or not.
And just a short time after we wrapped up filming yesterday, ICE Boston told us they picked up 2 more targets in different parts of town away from our cameras, one of which was a previously deported Honduran illegal alien now arrested for allegedly raping a woman and putting a gun in her mouth. The second is a Haitian man who first flew into the U.S. in 2023 as part of President Biden's controversial migrant flights mass parole program. Well, ICE arrested him yesterday because he is now facing local charges for sexual assault. We'll send it back to you.
Bill, such an excellent report. Thank you for that very much.
Mnuchin all over the place. He does great work on the border. Now he's up there in Boston.
Yeah,
Boston.
I saw a clip earlier. Actually, the Daily Mail put out an article earlier, and Tom Homan was asked about that particular migrant from Haiti who said he's not going back to Haiti. Tom Homan said, yeah, actually he is going back to Haiti.
Yeah, speaking of Haiti, I wonder what's going to happen with the Haitian migrants in Springfield. We're keeping an eye out on Springfield too. Not a lot of news out of Springfield of what's going to happen with all that, because now you have the TPS rescinded, right? The CBP1 app no longer in play. What do you think is going to happen in Springfield? Do you think the Haitian migrants are going to have to go back?
Yeah, I do. I think some will. Actually, I think a lot of them will, because the TPS program has an 18-month window. So, now normally when they put a certain country on that list, that's a temporary protective status. When they put a country on that list, it's an 18-month thing where they can come here temporarily. And it's normally for refugees. It's more or less a refugee program. And so Haiti's one of the countries on that list, and the expiration will be coming. So that's a particular program that has an expiration date. And even though Joe Biden, on his way out of office, he did extend some of those TPS, still, even though he just renewed some of them, it will still have an 18-month expiration. And, they may want to go back and look and see if they can reverse some of those or whatever. But the situation in Springfield and some of those other towns like Charleroi that we went to, that have just absolutely been taken over by Haitians, that's a different ball game. That's the TPS program. So they'll have to reform that program most likely, and also look at the list of countries that are on it, because there's so many countries on the list right now.
So we got a clip with an immigration attorney. What something's going on in Providence today. There's a immigration attorney. I'm going to get some information. While you get that clip, Magnolia, apparently they were at an immigration. And let me get some information about this particular. It was a law office of a guy by the name of Joseph Molina Flynn. And he's a prominent immigration attorney in Providence and Boston who boasts of having lived illegally in the U.S. for 15 years after arriving from Colombia on a tourist visa. And there's clips of agents, FBI, and Department of Homeland Security going to his office today and seizing boxes of material. It was a raid. This is going to be interesting because I wonder what are in those boxes that they went. And what do they have here? What do you think they're doing here? Getting names of people he helped get in?
Yeah, I think that this is what I was mentioning before when I said it looks like they're actually not just going after the criminal migrants, but the people who are facilitating them. So this is a person who was an undocumented immigrant himself and made his way, and now he basically runs this operation where he's helping others basically evade deportation. So looks like they're interested in his operation and what all he's been doing to defy the law.
Yeah, we're gonna monitor that. That reminds me of probably the feds and Homeland Security going to NGOs too. I think immigration attorneys, NGOs, I think are possible targets too. NGOs meaning Catholic Charities, Annunciation House, Mission Border Hope. I'm just giving some examples of some NGOs. I think NGOs that help facilitate. I bet you these NGOs have a treasure trove of documents inside their facilities.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
That could give them all types of information. And then, NGOs, as you see, immigration attorneys, and then, the Trump administration threatening to prosecute local officials. We got a news clip on that. We kind of discussed this, but let me just share what's going on that aspect.
Administration is now threatening to prosecute state and local officials who they deem to be interfering with mass deportation efforts. A Justice Department memo obtained by the Washington Post directs Trump administration staff to identify state and local laws that threaten to impede deportations and prepare to challenge those laws in court. That would certainly include Colorado's, where local law enforcement are not legally allowed to detain people solely for immigration violations. Elected Democrats in Colorado have repeatedly said they will cooperate with the federal government on immigration, but only within the bounds of state law, which blocks local law enforcement from detaining someone based solely on immigration status and from sharing that info with the feds. State and federal courts have affirmed that law, striking down attempts to overturn those laws, efforts led by conservative counties like Douglas County, ruling that ICE can request help from local authorities but cannot force the locals to perform federal immigration duties. Denver Mayor Mike Johnson has said that the city will not, quote, do ICE's job for them. And today, Democratic state legislators and immigration advocacy groups said the same.
We've already ensured that local law enforcement should be following state law and not doing ICE's job for them.
You know what all of this is about? Whether ICE
is a special agency that has exceptions from the Constitution, or is a law enforcement agency that needs to do their damn job.
Yesterday, Trump's border czar warned that immigration officers could cast a wider net in states with laws like Colorado, doing more widespread community raids rather than just picking up specific violent criminals directly from local jails.
Those people kind of crazy looking. The ones that support illegal immigration. It's just like these fringe
Yeah.
radicals. Scary. Very, very scary, Magnolia.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I have to be honest. It's strange. I don't understand why they fight so hard for this kind of stuff. They put so much energy into this, and the most common complaint from anyone in any of these cities is that they're doing all these things for people that are not even citizens, and they're ignoring their actual citizens, and that's a problem, and people are sick of it. I think that's why so many people, the vast majority of Americans, support these mass deportations, and that's just reality. So that you do have these few people, like you said, on the fringes that just continue to say these things that are not rooted in reality whatsoever. And so they just, when you hear them say it, you hear them talk, they just sound crazy.
Yeah, and you know, majority of the Trump won the popular vote, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the number one key campaigning for the Trump administration was the immigration issue. That's the number one issue. And I think that's what a lot of Americans voted for. Popular vote. He won the popular vote. I mean, this is kind of like a national mandate here. An indictment against the prior administration and Americans that are just fed up.
Yeah.
Fed up because they just did not want the direction that the country was going.
Yeah, everything just went way too far, way too overboard. And, you know, even people who support immigration and want to protect undocumented people seeking asylum, even people that support those things are not down with this. This is just it's just been absolute chaos for the last 4 years. One thing, we watched an interview on the way home today with Tucker Carlson and Eric Adams, and Eric was talking about the impact of the migrant crisis on New York, and he said something interesting. His belief with what he was saying is that we need to secure the borders, and what he was saying, he thinks the way we need to reform immigration in general is that people that are coming in here need to have a predetermined destination and a role to play in society. So he was basically saying, like, you know, all these people that are pouring over, it's just chaos because they come in and they just go wherever, and a lot of them end up in these shelters or on the streets. And he was pointing out the problem, you know, where they were getting buses, 8,000 a week of these people coming into New York, but at the same time, these people, the federal government would not allow them to work. So they had all these thousands of migrants piling up in their shelter system. Then, you know, eventually they're out on the streets, they're running around. So his idea was, like, if someone's coming in and they're seeking asylum, let's say, that person should be assigned somewhere to go. Like he was saying, for example, in New York, they need food service workers. So his suggestion was, when the people come, you say, okay, asylum seeker from Guatemala, we need you in New York, and you're going to report to this job. And that's kind of what he was saying. He thought that would be a way to reform immigration. I think it's a good idea to kind of, you know, it goes along with what they're saying about vetting, making sure that you know who's coming in. That's another problem, is there was absolutely no vetting of these people. They're literally punching in their information on an app, on the CBP One app, and they're getting an appointment to come. And it's just like submitting a concert ticket when you walk in the door. Here's my ticket. And they let them in. They put them on a bus. They go wherever they want. And that's kind of how it's just been for 4 years. And it's just complete chaos. And he also said, Eric Adams said, that the impact of this is going to be seen for years to come. It's not something that he was like, yeah, we may have gotten through the worst of it, through the actual crisis of it, but the impact of this will be felt, because he said, we used over $6 billion of taxpayer money that should have gone to other programs for our citizens. And so, he's one that we've kind of watched him evolve over the past couple years, and he seems to be fully on board with the program. He definitely wants to help get these criminals out of New York, because he's a law and order type of guy. And so for them to arrest people only to have them right back out on the street over and over and over again is just such a massive problem.
Yeah, we have a clip here. Speaking of New York City is also preparing for mass deportations. Let's see what's happening in New York with their preparations and their plans.
To more on the breaking news we first brought you at the top of the newscast. The Pentagon will begin deploying as many as 1,500 active duty troops to help secure the southern border in the coming days.
Deportations in cities like New York could start soon. Our Jessica Formoso joins us now. And Jess, you actually sat down with the commissioner of the mayor's office of immigrant affairs. What did they have to say?
Yeah, Natasha, see, that's right. I did. And there's a lot of unknowns. Our local officials can't give us concrete answers as to what could happen in the coming days. Multiple reports say raids will start in Chicago and then New York. What we do know is the mayor is talking to ICE officials about migrants who have committed crimes. The question is, if mass deportations take place in our city, what would it look like, and does the city have a plan?
On day one, I will launch the largest deportation program.
Before he was sworn in, President Donald Trump was vocal about initiating the largest mass deportation in U.S. history. And in his first day in office,
All illegal entry will immediately be halted, and we will begin the process of returning millions and millions of criminal aliens back to the places from which they came.
while details of how and when are scarce, the commander-in-chief has said he plans to mobilize the U.S. military to enforce the operation, an operation that has many migrants on edge.
No me siento seguro.
I do not feel safe. I do not feel safe. Jason Gonzalez arrived in New York City from Venezuela with his wife and 3 children in October. They've been in the city's care ever since. First placed in Floyd Bennett Field, a makeshift shelter on a national park, which is federal property.
Teníamos mucho temor.
We were very afraid because these are federal lands where we fear that with President Trump's return to the presidency, we could witness raids here. That shelter was closed earlier this month. So what would mass deportations look like across the country?
They're talking about workplace raids, family separations, strict restrictions on new immigrants, and potentially deporting, they say, 11 to 20 million people.
We have more than 16 million people in the United States who don't have full rights to be here.
Musafir Chisti is an attorney and senior fellow and director of the Migration Policy Institute at New York University School of Law. He believes deportations will happen. As to how many people could be deported, that remains to be seen.
I think you have to take the administration on its word that there will be some kind of mass deportation. What mass is, no one knows.
Laws, due process, he says, need to be followed, but the fear is real among the community. Jason worries schools and other sensitive locations may be targets. We are training our children to know what to do if something happens. It makes me very afraid that they could pick me up in the streets and never make it back home to my children. We are placing all their documentation in their backpacks, telephone numbers, so that they are prepared.
It's important not to allow panic set in.
Manuel Castro is the commissioner of the mayor's office of immigrant affairs. Over the last 2.5 years, he says over 220,000 asylum seekers have arrived in New York City. Today, 51,000 remain under the city's care. That's not counting the hundreds of thousands of undocumented immigrants living for years across our city.
Does the city have a plan?
First thing is to make sure that our city staff at all levels is trained on our sanctuary laws and our sanctuary city policies. Now, as city employees, we cannot cooperate with enforcement, but we also cannot interfere with enforcement.
But what will the city do if such plan is carried out?
There is only so much we can do to protect immigrants. The federal government has said they will enforce immigration law whether they receive support from cities or not.
Has the mayor or yourself or anyone in the administration been able to speak to the incoming administration? Have they been able to prepare you for anything?
There's so much that's still unknown.
Mayor Adams, who has met with President Trump, has been vocal about deporting migrants who have committed violent crimes.
People who commit these violent crimes must be addressed. And that is our conversation with ICE.
For now, all Jason and his family can do is be prepared. The first few weeks are going to be very scary for all of us.
Now, I did ask the commissioner if they have a plan in place if families are separated. Will there be a place for them to go to get information? The commissioner told me they are thinking through what that scenario might look like.
Yeah, so interesting.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica.
And I mean, the migrant crisis unfolding minute by minute. This is something, Steph, that you've been covering from the very beginning. Most recently, you were at the northern border. What can you tell us about what people are saying?
Yeah, so it's been a long time. I worked in South Texas, as all of you know, at the southern border for almost 4 years. I watched people cross the border in search of that better life. I saw Border Patrol and ICE taking action at the front lines. In Florida, I covered the complexities of immigration and obviously the migrant crisis here. Given the climate, Jessica and I have been collaborating to really round out the coverage as now we look at what this new administration, Jess, is promising.
That's right. And, you know, in the coming days, we're going to have a lot more stories. Stephanie's going to be looking at sanctuary cities, the laws, how they protect migrants. And, you know, we are now learning that there are some protections in place, not many, though. Also, I was at ICE headquarters this week, a long line out there, also immigration court. So we're going to take a look at the backlog, which we're talking about millions of cases, which is why, you know, there's such a big backlog. So we'll have a lot more in the coming days for you guys.
Yeah, very interesting.
Seems like that report there was more sympathetic towards migrants.
Yeah, you know, and I think that this issue we were talking about earlier, where some of these leaders, like in Chicago and other places, they keep on saying this about the people that are abiding by the law, just trying to get a better life, etc., asylum seekers. The media is making that worse because the media keeps putting these reports out, like you just said. You know, they're talking to this man, and they're talking to him as if he has reason to be afraid. His name was Jason. And he's like, you know, we're just trying to figure out what we can do. And if we get separated and this kind of stuff, it's like, is Jason admitting that he's a violent criminal and he's worried he's going to get deported? Or is he just listening to fake news, putting fear, you know, in his family? So I don't think the media is really helping the situation by reporting things that way. They're making it seem as if these families have reason to be concerned. Now, Jason might be a criminal. Maybe Jason has pulled off a string of robberies in the city, and maybe he actually is on the list and he should come up with a plan for his family. But if they went through the process legally and they're actually seeking asylum, working, doing what they're supposed to do, there shouldn't be any fear there. So I don't understand why the media would intentionally stoke that fear.
Well, speaking of that, we're going to play another clip because this other one's kind of like implying that Trump's going to target churches and schools. And, I'm not so sure about that. Maybe if a criminal is in a church and a school, yeah. But, that's the thing too, is, you're going to get some of these media here that puts out like stuff to, just get people on edge and act like they're unsympathetic and just going to round up anyone that's in the country illegally. So let's play this clip and share what they're putting out in reference to that topic.
President Donald Trump has authorized immigration officials to start targeting churches and schools, reversing a previous directive to prevent arrests in areas deemed sensitive.
It's the latest step that the new Trump administration has taken to fulfill his campaign promise of mass deportations. Here's ABC's Christiane Cordero.
Today, schools and churches nationwide are new targets for immigration enforcement after the Trump administration revoked a policy that barred arrests in sensitive areas.
They're pretty scared. Lots of questions about, are they safe here at school? Are they safe riding a school bus? Can they be just walking down the street and picked up? Lots and lots of fear.
It's part of a sweeping effort to move ahead with President Trump's campaign promise of mass deportations.
Birthright.
That also includes ending birthright citizenship, which already faces challenges in court. The administration disputes its protection under the 14th Amendment. Tomorrow, a judge in Seattle will consider a temporary restraining order to stop Trump's executive action. It's one of 4 federal lawsuits filed saying taking birthright citizenship away is unconstitutional, and the president doesn't have the authority to change its conditions.
I have one message for President Trump. I'll see you in court.
At yesterday's National Prayer Service, Bishop Marianne Buddy asked Trump to have empathy for undocumented immigrants.
And that you help those who are fleeing war zones and persecution in their own lands to find compassion and welcome here. Our God teaches us that we are to be merciful to the stranger. For we were all once strangers in this land.
In a social media post, Trump called the bishop a radical left hardline Trump hater, saying her sermon was inappropriate. Trump also issued a directive putting federal employees working on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs on administrative leave today. It's part of a larger vow to reverse DEI and affirmative action efforts nationwide, another campaign promise. Christiane Cordero, ABC.
They used the California Attorney General in this clip and said, we got a message for Trump. See you in court. California has other issues. They shouldn't be fighting this issue. They got issues right now, big issues when it comes to that tragedy and disaster with the wildfires. And they're going to be wasting a lot of taxpayers' money, fighting Trump when all that money could be used for wildfire victims.
Yeah, I mean, it's overwhelming. But I think that the thing with the churches and the schools, they were saying in that report, they typically have not done arrests in those places because they're deemed sensitive. But I guess he is taking that off the table. And now if someone that they're looking for goes into a church, they now have authorization to go in there and get the person. Because a lot of times these people will actually go into a church to avoid being arrested. Yeah. Because a church is the sanctuary. And so we actually saw a lot of that back in the 90s. I remember there was one case where someone was supposed to be deported and they specifically went into a church. So they do that. They go into churches to hide. And sometimes there are churches who actually harbor them. that's a thing. So some of these churches have these programs where they will allow these people to come in and literally seek sanctuary.
Well, schools, let's just say schools too, right? They're acting like, well, they're going to start raiding schools. Well, let me just point something out. The border in Sunland Park, New Mexico, right next to El Paso, there's no border wall. And the border wall goes to an end at one point at the mountain, right there by on the border of Texas and New Mexico. And Sunland Park has right over the border wall there where it goes to an end. There's a bunch of schools, elementary school and another school. And Border Patrol agents told me that the people that flee run across and they go into the school and they hide in the school. They hide in the school. So, I mean, yeah, exactly. But I should be able to go into the school and get them if illegals are hiding there.
Right.
That's just one example.
I think that's what they're talking about. And so
but they make it look like, oh, well, they're going to go in there with children and guns blazing and round people up at schools like it's like a bad thing. No, if a criminal runs into a school, law enforcement's going to go in there and get the criminal.
Right. And it's, it's similar to like a mass shooter. A mass shooter doesn't go somewhere where they know people are going to have guns all around them. So what do? They go to a gun-free zone where people are less likely to have guns that could stop them. So, it's a similar tactic. It's like, well, they know historically that if they're at a school, on a school property or in a church, they can't be arrested. And so it's a tactic that they use. It's not as if they're actually going to go in and do raids on schools and churches. That's not what this is about. This is about criminal illegals who use churches and schools as a sanctuary.
Yeah, they want. They want to apply that if they're going to go in there and start rounding up illegal kids that are in school attending. They're not doing that. They're not going to do that. They're not going to go in there and get the school children that are in the country illegal. They're not going to do that. They're talking about the criminals.
Yeah, and I think any operation that they would stand up to go find someone who's hiding in a church or a school, for example, I think that operation would be planned with great precision.
Yeah, exactly. Arizona, let's talk about Arizona because an Arizona sheriff just recently spoke praising Tom Homan and Trump because we're also paying attention to what's going to happen in Arizona. We've been to Arizona. We've been all along the border in southern border in Arizona, Nogales, Sasabe, Lukeville, Cochise County. Cochise is a big Godaway. Nogales, they got chunks of border wall that's gone. Sasabe, they got that those camps out there 15 miles to the east in the middle of nowhere that are just wide open. People are coming in. Lukeville, they cut right through the walls. All the Africans come across. A lot of the sheriffs are on board with ICE. However, the governor's not. The governor seems like she doesn't want to comply with ICE. So it's going to be interesting in Arizona. But I think sheriffs are definitely going to allow the Trump administration to come into their counties and do what they have to do. And let's listen to one particular sheriff right here in Arizona.
Trump says he got to the White House just in the nick of time to fix the border crisis.
You look at what's gone on at the border, you look at what's going to happen, the crime that's going to happen. But I think we got there just in the nick of time. But we still have you covered better than anybody. We have terrorists in our country by the thousands. We have murderers in our country by the tens of thousands. If you look at Venezuela, their crime rate is down now 78%. Because they took their street gangs and they moved them into the United States. And you're seeing that in Colorado and Los Angeles and other places. And we're going to take care of it.
Arizona Border Sheriff Mark Daniels joins me now. Sheriff, thanks for being with us today. Are you already seeing a difference at the border?
I think we are. And let me say what I think. First of all, it was an excellent article you just put there. The most disturbing part was the fact that sanctuary cities, your local police chiefs, and even some sheriffs that don't work with our federal partners is why you have these threats. We all have to work together. But last week and a half, we had a lot of pursuits, a lot of high risk, a lot of smuggling, trafficking in our county. But this week, it's kind of went down a little bit. The messaging is strong by Border Czar Homan and President Trump. He's got a very, very transparent agenda, and that is if you're a public or national threat in this country, it's going after you, and that's good police work.
So the Pentagon is going to send an additional 1,500 troops to the border. As many as 10,000 could be deployed there soon. Is this how you solve the border crisis, Sheriff?
Well, it's a recipe. It's a slice of the pie here. You have to get them down here. They're in a support world. Nothing new. But I've always said this, Brian, the fact that we protect countries throughout the world. We got to protect the homeland, especially where we've been for the last 4 years. We got to step up, take care of our own, make America first, protect the citizens in this country, and locate those individuals that need to be out of our country because they're a threat. But we got to start with securing the border first. The military is going to help us do that.
Next one for you, Sheriff. ICE arrested more than 460 serious criminal migrants in the first 33 hours since Trump took office. This, to me, just proves there was no serious vetting of criminals at the border. What do you say?
Well, we've been seeing that, Brian, for 4 years. It's catch and release. We've seen people come that we know are a threat, that were released in our country by the former catch and release policy, the extreme policies of coming to the border illegally. They set the side. If you're coming to the country illegally, Brian, you're automatically supposed to be expelled. They set that aside. The rule of law has been fractured over the last 4 years. So yes, it's just sad what's happened here, and the tragedies that we're hearing about, that we're seeing. These stories you just did right there shows you the amount of threat. That's only a sample of what's going on. A lot of work ahead for the federal government and our local law enforcement.
Really, really quick, Sheriff, Bill Melugion's report, I watched that. I'm astonished by it, but I'm also very encouraged that it looks like real progress is being made right away. Is that your read?
It is. We've had more engagement with Border Czar Homan, Vice President Vance, and also President Trump in the last two or 3 months than we had with President Biden's administration over the last 4 years. That says it all right there. He prioritized it. He's transparent about it. There is no secret agenda here. The thing is, he's going to protect America.
Amazing. Priority, transparent, you get results. Sheriff, great stuff. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
Sheriff Daniels,
Yeah,
Arizona.
remember we played Katie Hobbs recently? She did, I don't know, it was about a month ago, I guess, maybe 2 months. We did a thing where she did a press conference and she was saying how, you know, she's against all this stuff that Trump wants to do and really pushing back on it. And she looked like a hostage victim. We were joking because we were like,
it's like Pritzker.
Is she legitimately scared of the cartel?
Well, I was telling you today, Magnolia. Oh, by the way, for people that don't know, a border agent got murdered the other day in the Swanton sector, the northern border. Our thoughts and prayers are with that border agent. We've been up there at the Swanton sector. It's wide open up there. But Arizona is like there. It's known as the Wild West, and that's one spot that I said, Magnolia, for us covering. You know, if we came across people that crossed over illegally, we'd keep our distance from and not interfere because border agents have been murdered in Arizona in the past. And out there in the middle, man, they're toting guns, and I'll call them border bandits and cartels. I mean, it's really violent. Even on the other side of Sasabe, Arizona, that town there is warring and just there's murders. Arizona scares me. Out of all the places, on the southern border, I'm more fearful in Arizona than anywhere else. So it would not shock me if Hobbs cartel has something over her. Or
Arizona is very noticeably way worse than the other border states. I mean, I was saying, to me, as far as the border wall goes, the number one most ridiculous section of the border wall is Nogales, hands down. It is just completely ridiculous. You see throughout the border in different places, you see holes in the wall where they've, cut away the wall or whatever. But in that section in Nogales, it's just insane. It's like massive sections are missing, cut out, and they don't even replace them. It's just all along the whole entire section. It's just hole after hole after hole. And then at the same time, remember we were there and we saw the border wall materials just stacked up on the ground when there was these massive holes right in front of us. And we were like, are you fixing the wall? And they were very sus. They were really shady about what they were doing. And it looked like they were literally just picking up the beams, the border beams from one pile and moving them to another pile. It was like they weren't really doing anything. And it's just a joke there. It's an absolute joke compared to anywhere else. Not to mention Sasabe, which is basically like the Taj Mahal of migrant camps. It's insane.
That's that place that's called No More Deaths. No More Deaths, that NGO that helps them. There's just massive migrant tents up there, and there's rolling hills in Arizona. It's the rolling hills along the border, but 15 miles to the east of Sasabe, which is pretty much between Sasabe and Nogales, there is a No More Deaths camp, and the wall is just cut open, and there's just tent city of just the NGOs just set out every food imaginable, every single thing you could possibly think of for people to be out there and living there until Border Patrol picks them up. And thousands of camp come through there. Even to the east of Nogales. Remember, there was a rancher that got indicted for murdering a migrant coming through.
Yes.
The 75-year-old rancher who ultimately was a mistrial, and they dropped his case. But that area there is just, there's migrants coming through. The wall ends just east of Nogales, and it turns into these, like, I don't know what it is, but these like cross. It's not even a border there. It's not even a border. It's just these cross things. I don't know what they're called. It's not a fence, but these like cross things as the barrier to the border.
Yeah.
But people just walk right over it.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go farther east over that mountain, and then you get into Cochise County, and there is a wall there, Naco, and this is where these cartels and the gotaways, they're literally going in packs in camouflage and having like knee pads and camouflage and weapons and night vision goggles, and they're smuggling every single drug you could possibly think of. And it's scary in Arizona. It's scary. And between Sasabe and Lukeville is a gigantic Indian reservation. There is no wall because the Indian reservations prohibit walls from even being built. Now, I don't know how the Trump administration is going to deal with that, because those spots, those Indian reservations there in the middle of Arizona, they're just coming through.
Yeah.
And then you got Lukeville, which is wild. Lukeville, where they're literally at one point last year cutting through the beams of the wall. And Africans, people from Africa, coming through. So Arizona is a big mess. And then you even go towards Yuma, Arizona, south of Yuma, and you and I witnessed people climbing over the wall with ladders. Remember, Border Patrol was fighting these cartels and people over the ladders, and it's crazy stuff in Arizona.
Yeah, it's definitely the worst of all the states. And, even California is not like that. I mean, California, even though they, in Jacumba and everything, they have those it's a pretty elaborate operation in Jacumba as far as the camps go and the process, just the way it's so clockwork. But even there, the wall at least is intact. Arizona, it's just a mess. You can tell that they pretty much don't do any type of border patrolling, like actually stopping people from coming. You can just tell they don't, it's not a priority. And the case that you just mentioned of the homeowner, the rancher, who he shot at these migrants, there were these migrants coming through their yard, like
But they
constantly.
would continue to go through his yard.
In the
They
middle
would
of
go
the
in there
night,
every
all the
day
time.
and use his yard as a smuggling route.
Yeah.
And he got sick of it. And as you being the homeowner, would you want somebody trudging through your yard every day as a smuggling route to go through? Sometimes they knock on his door. Like, I would be in fear. Our friends from Jacumba, the Silvas, people knock on their doors. Hundreds are crossing through and knocking on their doors and going through their yard. I wouldn't want that. Scary. And speaking of
the guy who shot at the migrants in Arizona, they had migrants coming through their yard all the time. And there was one night where there were several migrants that he could hear them across the way, and he shot at them. He thought that they had a gun, I think. But no, the Arizona, basically, the message there was, you're expected to just deal with this. You're expected to put up with it. We're not sending anyone to help. We're not going to patrol your yard. We're not going to do anything for you. You just have to let them come. And that was the message they sent. They prosecuted him to the full extent. They took it all the way to the trial. And he ended up getting a mistrial, and they did dismiss the case. But that just shows you where their priorities are in Arizona. The priority is not protecting American citizens or Arizonans. The priority is to, I guess, allow all these illegals to come through, and they just expect people to deal with it.
Yeah, that's definitely, Arizona's definitely, I mean, I'd say California, Arizona, and then eastern New Mexico, Sunland Park and Santa Teresa are spots that it'll be interesting to see. It'd just be interesting to see, what happens at these spots moving forward. And I told you yesterday, we were discussing, going back to the border and going where should we go? And that's kind of the area I want to go. Texas seems like they got everything like here. We've been playing the clip here of the buoys, just the wire, the National Guard. Don't mess with Texas. They ain't playing in Texas. They're not playing. Abbott is, Abbott and the Trump administration are locked in together on the same page completely on this mission. I mean, I think, it'd be suicide for literally anyone to even try to cross in Texas, because it's not going to go well for you. So I think these people are going to push up either through Santa Teresa, Sunland Park, Arizona, or Jacumba, California. Speaking of Jacumba, Allie Bradley from News Nation reported that there were some hikers that got shot yesterday by border bandits in Jacumba that came across and shot at some hikers, hit one, and then ran back into Mexico. So that's a concern too. I don't know what that's about. That's the first time I've heard anyone being shot. That's an area that we covered. But we're definitely paying attention here. Are they getting more desperate there? Or are cartels mad that Trump's president and taking it out? Or are they going to start targeting Americans more? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that the border itself, I think that the illegal crossings are pretty much going to stop, except for the gotaways in the areas you were just talking about. But the problem is now that we've had 4 years of this, and so the problem is not really on the border any longer. The problem is now within our country, because we have millions and millions of unvetted people that have come in. They're setting up shop all over the country. Tren de Aragua is, I think, in every state now. Not only that, I see a couple people have been mentioning the Chinese immigrants. Yes, there's a ton of Chinese immigrants that have come through, mostly in Jacumba, where we saw the Chinese immigrants. We actually had a video that we posted several months ago where we were able to actually capture footage of a massive group of Chinese migrants coming in through Jacumba in the middle of the night. It was the middle of the night.
Yeah.
There were, I don't know how many. There were like a few dozen. And so, yeah, there's a lot of those Chinese immigrants, and who knows where they are now. So that's the problem now. So the problem has sort of evolved, and they're securing the border. They're doing all these things to stop the crossings. They've cut off the app. They're basically cutting off access to the border. So the problem now is within the United States, in these different cities. And so they have to go through, they've got to identify these people, the different migrant gangs. And thankfully, they are already on the radar. We've seen many arrests of these gang members, and the tourists. What do they call them? The burglary gangs. They call them the tourist gangs or whatever. A lot of them will use these tourist visas to come in and bring their family members. And what they end up doing is they grow their gangs that way. So, those are the problems now with this. There's going to be a lot of these raids happening in different cities. So I think keeping an eye on Chicago and Denver, New York, we know there will be plenty coming out of there too. And it does sound like one major tactic they're going to use is jail release dates. So when someone is arrested and they're put into jail, they're going to be monitoring those release dates so that as soon as they come out of the jail, they're going to be there to pick them up.
Yeah, speaking of Jacumba, Jacumba, we see mostly Chinese, Turkish, Middle Eastern, Turkish, and Chinese. Not a lot from Mexico, and not a lot from South America, believe it or not. See, different parts of the country have different groups of, where they're coming in from. That we what we've discovered and what we found out based on being there and seeing the documents being shredded, it seems like a lot in Jacumba and Southern California are going to the coastline there in Cancun, or not Cancun, the coastline, the coast there, and flying in there and then staying in these Airbnbs for 30 days and working their way up and then coming in. But they're coming, they're being flown to Mexico, getting that 30-day visa that you can get if you provide them a residency, which is an Airbnb, and then making their way up through. In Lukeville, Arizona, a lot of Africans. In Nogales, Arizona, it was definitely organized because cartel would drop off people every 15 minutes, and it seemed like a lot of people from Chile and Ecuador. And then in Texas, a lot of Venezuelans. You don't see many Venezuelans coming in through California. The Venezuelans are mostly coming in through Texas or Sunland Park, New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's different ethnic groups in different countries come in different parts of the southern border.
Yep.
So we appreciate y'all watching tonight. We'll continue to monitor. We just wanted to give you updates and talk about, the border and the deportations. And I'm sure some epic footage is about to come out. We will continue to be on it. Any press conferences, anybody defies. I know in San Francisco, they gave some press conference yesterday saying they're going to fight Trump's immigration policies and, their area, the Bay Area, San Francisco, I guess Oakland, San Francisco, Bay Area. They gave some press conference. It was pretty, I don't know, it's kind of weak.
Oh,
But
brother.
yeah, we could play it, but it's typical what they seem like they're doing in California, San Diego, Los Angeles, the Bay Area. They're defying Trump. They got a lot of other issues, but they want to just fight tooth and nail to preserve their sanctuary cities. So
Yeah, but they have so many other problems that they need to worry about, and so I just don't think that the citizens and the voters really have a whole lot of tolerance for this anymore, especially when we just watched them allow major parts of Los Angeles burn to the ground because they're not doing anything to mitigate fires in the state. San Francisco is a lost city. There's really no other way to say it. San Francisco has so many problems. I mean, probably a lot of it, the migrant crisis added to those problems, in fact. So yeah, they really don't have any room to talk. I don't think that they have a leg to stand on at this point, and people just don't want to hear it. People don't want to hear that anymore. People are tired. We're sick of seeing this.
Yeah, so we'll probably be back tomorrow with an update on the border. This is definitely something now that we're paying attention to for sure, to see everything, the raids, who fights it, what else is happening. Again, it's cold up there in these cities, but that actually might benefit ICE, because then these people are off the streets in certain locations and go in there and get them inside the warm homes. Be easier to find people, because it's not like migrants in Chicago are wandering the streets right now. They're somewhere in there inside. Yeah. It's cold.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of this. We're really at the very beginning. Trump was just inaugurated 3 days ago on Monday. So this has only been going on for 3 days. There's going to be a whole lot more of these raids and deportations. And then moving on from there, we'll just have to see what happens. Just wait till they announce that they're going to strip federal funding from these places who don't cooperate. Yes. Just wait till that comes, because that's coming. Another thing likely to come will be defunding places like Catholic charities. So that'll probably be a pretty big deal when that happens. I don't think that they'll defund Catholic charities completely, but I think they'll probably see a pretty significant drop in their funding. And California will probably think they're getting an earthquake, but really it's just they're getting defunded.
Yeah. And, I think some of these raids are also going to be happening at these hotels. A lot of hotels around the country that host these migrants at the taxpayers' expenses. A lot in San Diego, a lot in Chicago, and we'll probably go to these hotels. ICE will probably go to these hotels. So,
that's another thing. The hotels, I forgot about the hotels. Yeah, that is like easy pickings right there. I mean, what's crazy about a lot of this migrant crisis that we've been watching the last few years, it was one thing we said constantly was it's a very, very highly orchestrated process. It's very streamlined. It's very efficient. You have entire hotels that are housing these people. And so in a lot of ways, a lot of these tactics that they used the last 4 years to facilitate this flow is actually going to help the Trump administration, because now they know exactly the hotels where to find these people, because they're set up in all these major cities. So they have right there, they can just go to these hotels, go through, if there's probably tons of them piled into these hotels. The other thing is the app itself. The CBP One app they really did not think that through because that's data now in the hands of the Trump administration. So everybody who ever used that app, they already have all that information, in a nice little tidy app. They can just go through. They can see what people put in as their reason for seeking asylum, and so they can easily weed through those data lists, and they can say, okay, well, this isn't valid, or anyone who said this particular thing, we're going to put them on the list for deportation. Anyone who said this particular answer, we will ensure that they have a court date so that they can have their case heard. So in a lot of ways, like with all of the way that they were so coordinated, and there were so many agencies involved, all of that now is with the Trump administration. And so that's going to really help a lot.
Yeah. Stay tuned, folks. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we cover.
Oh yeah. And somebody, Jeff said the cell phones too. Yeah. That's another thing. They gave them a lot of them got free cell phones. So now they can just track those phones. I mean,
track the phones.
They didn't really.
Some of them got Bank of America cards too. Bank of America cards, debit cards.
Yeah.
Track their spending habits.
Yep.
All right, folks. We cover the border 24/7, 365. Thanks for spending time with us. And until next time, be safe out there. And if you see anyone in the country illegally, report them. You might get a $750 reward. But just report them. Even if you don't get a reward, report them. Do your duty. Because we don't support illegal immigration on JLR Investigates at all.
No.
All right. Any parting final words, Magnolia?
Nope. I'm sure we'll be covering this topic for a long time to come.
A long time to come. So hit that sub button, like, and notification button. And if something does break, like some sort of activity at a border, whatever like that, we are on standby. We will go back. We will go back. Have a great day, everyone. Be safe. And thanks for watching JLR Investigates. Talk to you soon.
All right. Have a good night.
Good night.